Hello everyone to the next part of the Iron Man-a-thon. And for today's video, we are reviewing... not an Iron Man. During the planning of this series, I didn't have as many Iron Man figures as I do right now, so I kinda ran out. Sorry, I'm also a bit sick, but I want to get this video out. So today we're reviewing a guy with a similar color scheme to my other Iron Men, Tahu, Master of Fire. This was a LEGO set released in the year 2015 for a retail price of about $20. For today's video, I'm going to start with what I think of the building experience. I personally think this is a very fun figure to build. You see, it has a very simple system, especially compared to stuff like Gunpla, where you have all these different bones and whatnot, and all these shells. Let's go to the back of the legs, because that's actually a pretty good example of this. As you can see, we start with these black and sometimes gray skeleton pieces, and then you build up with those, and then you add a bunch of different flourishes, which are typically in different colors. Like here, it's in red and gold, as well as all these Technic bits, which we'll get to when we start talking about gimmicks. I personally think that this guy looks pretty good, you know? He's obviously a lot more simple than your other earlier BioNicle figures, but since it's a new line, I think that it works pretty well, you know? Especially since it's kind of meant to be a bridge for what never came, where they were trying to bridge typical BioNicle stuff with CCPS. It's kind of like what Hero Factory's first year was for it. Paint-wise, this figure is quite minimal, which is to be expected of all LEGO CCPS-style figures. You know, he's only really got printing there, but hey, at least it is printing rather than a sticker. But yeah, otherwise, all of the pieces are molded in the individual colors, whether they be gold, red, or those bits of black, or those translucent pieces. However, I feel like the color scheme really works for the figure, especially since he's meant to be a fire-based character. He does have a couple of flourishes of silver, but they look more like equipment rather than actual parts of him, you know, like if he was wearing gloves. Or maybe they are his actual parts and all the red bits are like clothing. Who knows? I typically keep him looking like this. However, you can pull up these little swords to kind of give him a very different look, and it gives him a lot more height, even if it is a bit artificial. Now, accessory-wise, he comes with a decent selection. I'm going to start with the stuff that doesn't come on his body initially. First off, we have a green skull spider, which is basically a mask in the series with a couple of extra legs added to it. Now, this is nice because it adds conflict within the box. It gives Tahu somebody to fight right out of the box, and since this was meant to be a children's toy, that's a really nice addition. However, this also kind of acts like a facehugger, you know? Where you're able to pop off Tahu's mask, add the skull spider, and you're meant to imagine that he's been taken over by the skull spider. A very fun gimmick, but not how I would personally have him displayed. Some would consider his normal mask an accessory purely because he comes with this nice golden mask. It's very nicely molded in a really nice pearl gold plastic. On the figure, you do the same thing you did with the skull spider, where you take it off, slip on the Tahu mask, and boom, he's a bunch more powerful now, apparently. I feel like this works really well for him, especially since he already has gold throughout his color scheme, unlike maybe with certain other characters in the line. Next up, accessory-wise, his final accessories is his set of 4 swords. Firstly, he's got this set of 2 golden katana-looking weapons, which, as with all CCBS weapons are able to just slot right into his hands using these axle ports. And yeah, I'd say they're nice smaller weapons. However, they're only really used when he's on his lava board as a lava board. It gives him a weapon to use when he is on it like that. Speaking of a lava board, we got this pair of much larger swords, which, if we move Tahu back a bit, we are able to force together, and there's typically a bit on the back, but I seem to have lost it in transit. But there's a little part in the back that allows it to stay together. However, friction is able to keep it together decently well, and then you just put it on the ground, use the two pins, that are on it, plug into the pinholes on his feet, and might split apart, but you can easily just put it right back together, and boom, you got him on his lava board. Yes, lava board. He does lava surfing, for those of you who aren't familiar with BioNicle. And this is a nice little callback to Tahu Nuva, who also had a lava board, but he didn't have two dinky little swords. And if we move to Tahu's back and put the dinky swords back in there as what is considered storage, if I don't break apart the figure, yeah, we can split apart the lava board, stick it right into Tahu's hands, and now we finally have Tahu in all of his glory. These big-ass swords are really fun to mess around with and to pose, you know? However, it's also really fun to use with the play feature. You may have noticed that on Tahu's back there's this giant yellow gear, which is attached to all these other little black gears. Which, this is a super annoying bit, that it's a yellow gear, and that is remedied in future figures with them replacing it with a more black gear. However, all you gotta do to mess with the gimmick is grab it and spin it around. And in doing that, you swing his arms up and down. However, unlike earlier figures, they are able to hold the pose as there are friction gears that are able to keep it up. While with older figures, if you try to hold it in a pose like this, it'll just droop right back down. This makes this Tahu figure probably the most fun one. While he is still able to hold some amazing poses, he still has the super fun gearbox-based gimmick. Speaking of poses, let's get to this figure's posability. Starting off, he's got a ball joint at the head. Sorry, his mask popped off, but yeah, he's got a ball joint at the head, which is able to look up pretty far, down a decent amount, and it's able to do a full 360, which is pretty unlimited compared to other figures. He has a double ball joint at these shoulder pads, allowing them to move however you need them to. There's a ball joint at the shoulder, which is pretty unlimited. It's technically a ball joint, but I call it a hinge joint at the elbow, which is able to go about 90 degrees, thanks to the armor getting in the way a bit. There's a ball joint at the hand, at each hand, which is really nice and allows for some great range of movement at the hands. Sadly, no waist articulation, and you could also consider the gear gimmick as a piece of articulation at the shoulders. At the hips, you've got a ball joint that allows it to kick out, kick up super high, kick back all the way, maybe a bit too far, and for spread, it's able to go all the way up, only limited because of the waist armor. He has a nice, slightly greater than 90-degree bend at the knee, and his feet are at ball joints, which allows them to swivel around, go up and go down, and pivot, which is great to see. All of this range of motion is amazing to get this guy into different basic poses and action poses, which would have never been possible in figures of old. This is the closest I could get to that pose with the old figure. However, I can see where people could get annoyed at this figure, as the gearbox is still a little bit fidgety compared to how solid the shoulders are on other figures in the line. However, another great thing about this figure is its size. I sadly do not have the ruler on me right now. However, he is one of the tallest figures in my collection. To show this off, we're going to start with a previous incarnation of this character, Tahu Nuva, who is a little over a head's height shorter than Tahu Master here. This is Tahu Master. To continue with the Iron Man-a-thon theme, here is the first figure we reviewed for it, the Marvel Legends Iron Man Mark 7. A 6-inch scale figure, though he's a little taller than 6 inches, and you can see how he is decently dwarfed by Tahu here. We also have the basic line Hasbro Mark 50 Iron Man. And if you think he dwarfed previous figures, here he is with the 3.75-inch scale hypervelocity suit Iron Man. Here he is next to the real grade Gundam Astray Red Frame, one of the best model kits in my collection. Definitely pick him up. I'll do a review of him later, though. For another Marvel comparison, here he is next to the Marvel Legends Infinity War Iron Spider. Here's one of the few figures that I have that almost compares to him size-wise, the Master Grade Gundam Alex version 2.0. And for a final comparison, here he is with his other brothers and sister from BioNicle Generation 2. So all in all, I really do enjoy this figure, and I think he's a great buildable figure even with his flaws. And I would have highly recommended you picked him up when BioNicle G2 was still going, but I was unable to spread that message in time, and it got cancelled, probably because of super low sales, even though LEGO denies that. You know, it's been super saddening because over the past couple of months, everything that I've loved has kept dying. Like, even if you don't think about BioNicle, which was like multiple years ago, I had Iron Man die on me, my favorite superhero. Just gone. And a year prior, my old channel was deleted out of the blue that I had been working on for months that had a decently popular video, even if I wasn't super proud of it. All that progress that I had made, just gone. In an instant. And I don't know, I just don't feel so good. What was that? I don't have a doorbell on that door. What in the world? What in the... An empty box for an Iron Man figure. Why is it empty? What the...